Good morning and welcome to our NAB Insights for Business Owners series, the fourth for this year. I'm Shane Ditcham, Business Banking Executive for Sydney, or am I an AI version of Shane Ditcham, Business Banking Executive for Sydney? I guess we'll find out today. Here today as host and representing all of my business banking colleagues right across the country. So welcome and thank you for making time for us to be with us today. Today we're presenting insights on what seems to be the most talked about topic in business today. Artificial intelligence, or AI, a topic we know is on the mind of our business customers and indeed for ourselves here at NAB. Firstly, we begin by acknowledging the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as Australia's first peoples and the traditional owners of the land where we live and work. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and we're proud to live in a country which is home to the world's oldest living culture. Today it is my great pleasure to be joined by Jessica Dawson, Head of Gen AI Product Strategy here at NAB. Jessica holds a law degree but decided to spend the last 15 years in the world of customer experience, data science, data analytics, spaces across the telecommunications, media and the financial services industries. Jessica has used her solution-focused approach to lead and deliver multi-million-dollar transformation strategies. But mostly, Jess just loves uncovering how best to improve the customer experience. Fantastic. So today, we will cover and share insights on two key themes. What is AI and how is it already disrupting business? And what strategies and tools could you consider as a business owner and leader for your business? Of course, we would love your questions, which you can share via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in this webinar, and we will try and respond to those during and at the end of the presentation. So Jessica, thank you for spending some time with us today. Welcome, and over to you to share and take us through your AI insights, and maybe starting with what can you tell us about that first question?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shane, and thank you so much, everyone, for having me here today. As Shane has flagged, I'm Jess Dawson. I feel like I always need to preface my role title with, I'm not an AI engineer, and I don't have a mathematics degree. As Shane mentioned, I've got a law degree, but what I do have is that really deep, rich experience in understanding customer insights and how we can use data and AI to improve the customer experience. So really pleased to share with you today a little bit more about this topic of AI. But first and foremost, I just wanted to acknowledge the importance of medium-sized business in Australia's economy. So we think about the contribution to Australia's GDP, to innovation and export growth and job creation, as well as anchoring it to our regional economies through manufacturing, through agriculture, tourism, construction, food and beverage, retail, the list goes on. But the most important thing is that AI is not just for big tech or for global giants. It's practical, it's actionable for your businesses today. In fact, I like to think that medium-sized businesses are in the sweet spot. They're small enough to adapt quickly to new technologies like AI, but they're big enough to have the customer base, the data and the workforce to actually benefit from efficiency and innovation. Before we jump into that though, there's a bit of alphabet soup that we need to unpack. There's so many different acronyms. There's AI, there's ML, there's deep learning, there's NLP, there's Gen AI. What does it all mean? So at the core, AI is really just a big umbrella term. It's about machines performing tasks that normally require human intelligence, so understanding language, finding patterns, making predictions. If we think about a seatbelt detection camera, for example, the AI there is what makes the decision about is the seatbelt on or not. From a machine learning perspective, we see that AI then actually start to improve the task by learning from data rather than just fixed rules. So for example, it then will consume thousands of images that have people wearing seatbelts or not wearing seatbelts. From a deep learning perspective, that's where it starts to get more advanced. So we start to see terms being used like neural layers, and that's where we see layers of algorithms that are inspired by the human brain to recognize complex patterns. So picking up actually, there's a seatbelt on, I think I can see that, but it's then compared and contrasted against the clothing that people are wearing. So all deeper layers of that technology. When we get to generative AI, that's where it's not actually about learning so much as it is about generating new content. So that's based on patterns that the technology has learned over time. And it's where we can actually start to think about, well, maybe it's going to generate some simulated images again to start teaching that deep learning about different types of vehicles that people might be driving or different types of clothing that they could have on. So again, AI is an umbrella term that encompasses all of these different types of technologies. Moving to generative AI itself, a lot of people seem to think that, understandably, ChatGPT is synonymous with generative AI, but in fact, the history of generative AI goes far beyond when ChatGPT was released in November of 2022. As you can see here on the slide, there is a prehistoric era, but the early sort of beginnings of generative AI kicked off in around 2014, where there was a lot of research that was being done into language and context and how that influences meaning when we communicate with each other. To put it in its simplest way, if I say terms like I'm going to the riverbank to jump in the water, that term bank has a very different meaning compared to if I said I'm going to the bank to make a deposit. And so a lot of this early research was looking at how where things are in a sentence can impact the meaning that it has. Over time, that has had significant impacts on us as a culture. I'm sure all of you have probably used Google Translate at some point in time, and that's really the early explosion of these sort of embryonic technologies where we start to then be able to do things like translate languages better because we have a better understanding of context and meaning, purely just based on where words are relative to each other in a sentence. Fast forward a few years, and that gets us to the release of ChatGPT, which took those models that people were starting to build that understood relativities of words, and it put a user interface on the front of it that enabled people to interact with the model. So that launched in November of 2022. And here at NAB, we kicked off our internal Gen AI program where we started to think about how best do we leverage this technology and embed it into our customer experiences in July of 2023. This is one of the last technical slides I'll have for you, but this is really here just to indicate that it's not really an and or an or conversation, although sometimes it can be. We should be picking the right technology to solve the right problem. But in actual fact, a lot of traditional AI works hand in hand with newer technologies like generative AI or agentic AI. So machine learning, for example, we've had that in use across the bank for decades as we start to think about things like credit decisioning models, forecasting. We would then start to look at, well, what's the intersect of machine learning with generative AI and how can we start to generate new content or use some of that information to start to personalize experiences and so on. So not always an and or an or conversation, but more often than not, it's a how do we use all of these technologies better together for our customers and colleagues. But let's take a step back for a moment. Let's start to think about what AI means for the economy as a whole, both globally and here in Australia. The headlines are often about trillion-dollar figures, but the impact is super real for medium-sized businesses. In fact, I had the privilege of hearing Philip Lowe present last week at a financial services symposium, and he was very heavily arguing that Australia's economic future is dependent on productivity growth, which has been stagnant for about the last 6 years. If productivity had continued growing at its previous rates, the economy would be significantly larger today and real wages would also be significantly higher. But the key takeaways that I had from Philip Lowe's presentation was that AI is not just hype. It is a strategic lever for growth and efficiency. So if we invest now in technology and workforce transformation, that's what's going to help you stay ahead. But also we need to start to think about engaging with policy and industry initiatives so that we can shape future-ready businesses. From a global perspective, globally, PwC estimates that AI could add more than $15 trillion to the world economy by 2030. That is bigger than the current output of China and India combined. But the majority of that growth won't come from robots that are doing everything for us, or, Shane. I'm not sure if that is the real Shane or if it's just an AI imposter. But it will come from productivity improvements. So businesses doing the same thing faster and smarter and with fewer errors. If you also subscribe to McKinsey's newsletters, their latest analysis shows that companies are already scaling AI. And they see 15 to 20% improvements in their bottom line across supply chains, customer service, and marketing. We start to think about the Australian context. We definitely see Australians forecasting that the AI could add between 115 billion and 315 billion to our GDP every year by 2030. That's the equivalent of adding another mining industry to our economy. But the biggest beneficiaries in Australia are expected to be in manufacturing, retail, professional services, healthcare, the very sectors that I know many of you represent today. And perhaps most critically for medium-sized businesses, I definitely think that AI is the greatest leveler. It's what's going to allow you to close the gap with larger players who have traditionally had advantages in analytics and automation. So on the whole, it's not just an abstract story about the future. It's absolutely a near-term opportunity for medium-sized businesses so that you can become more efficient, more innovative, and more competitive, both here and internationally. So we start to think about what some of those opportunities are for medium-sized businesses. If you haven't already started to scope that out, there's definitely some ideas that I can share with you. So from a customer-facing perspective, thinking about things like AI-powered chatbot for customer service, for operational efficiency, automated invoice processing or demand forecasting. But the backlog of things that you could do, or the list of initiatives that you could do in this space, is really endless, starting with really simple things like meeting summarizations or summarizing the wealth of data that you might have across your organization is one of the most richest initiatives that you could kick off with. From a growth and innovation perspective, thinking about how do we actually create and design our products differently through AI-driven product design, marketing personalization, completely disrupting the way that copywriting might be done within your organization. And then finally, AI fraud detection, potentially from a risk management perspective, if that is something that impacts you as much as it impacts the financial services industry, thinking how could we work smarter, not harder, with picking up some of those instances. Or in fact, what are those regulatory or compliance related pieces that we also need some help with, and could AI help in that regard? In terms of how your peers in the medium-sized space are already using AI, let me bring that to life for you with a couple of examples. So businesses not too dissimilar to yours already putting AI to work. I think the key kind of takeaway here from this slide is it doesn't always mean that it needs to be those flashy robots or the drones or self-driving vehicles. It's really just simple optimization that can help you deliver strong and measurable return on investment in a short space of time. And I think these examples also demonstrate that it's not about boiling the ocean. So each of them started with a problem, they piloted an AI solution, they measured the results, and then they scaled things moving forward. So regardless of your industry, that would be one of your takeaways. And I'm going to share with you in a moment my sort of recommended playbook for how do you get started. But to run you through these examples, you've got Visy Glass. I think they operate at a scale that's similar to many medium-sized manufacturers here in Australia. They use AI-driven predictive maintenance on their production lines. Through analysing the data from sensors that they put in, they've been able to reduce the unplanned downtime that they have significantly, and they've also avoided things like emergency maintenance costs, which of course is days of lost productivity otherwise if their services and plant was interrupted. From a professional services perspective, you've got Hall and Wilcox there, a mid-tier law firm with about 900 staff in Australia. They piloted generative AI tools to speed up their contract review and legal research. So what used to take a junior lawyer, 3, 4, 5 hours can now be done in the space of just minutes, which frees up staff for higher value, more advisory type work. And then finally, from a logistics and distribution perspective, we've got CMA CGM, which their Australian division, I believe, is also mid-market scale locally. What they have done is start to think about how can we optimize the routes that our vessels take when we're moving freight. They've cut their fuel costs significantly. I think in these industries, some of you could probably tell me better than I can, those fuel costs make up 30 to 40% of your operating costs. So to be able to shave off even 5, 10% from that is quite significant to the bottom line. But they've also been able to improve their delivery reliability at the same time. So a great news story there, not only for the organisation, but also for their customers and consumers at the end of the day. So again, bottom line here is regardless of your industry, just pick a focused problem, pilot a solution, start to think about the results that you want to measure, and then how do you actually scale that particular solution that you've put in place. I think if you jump on board now, that's where you're going to be able to build that enduring advantage. But I'm conscious that I've been talking for a while. So Shane, what do you think about all that?
Firstly, I think it's terrific to see how businesses are embracing AI and getting those outcomes, particularly the one you just shared there, logistics, and how they're using AI to reduce fuel costs. I think you correctly said to be on the mind of a lot of our business customers. So it's great to see it move from what is AI to how businesses are applying it and getting those outcomes. One question coming through, and this might come into where you're talking about how businesses might engage with AI that haven't already, is what's your view, Jessica, on businesses having an AI policy, and where could a business go to get help with that?
Yeah. I think a bit tongue-in-cheek, always starting with generative AI, maybe asking ChatGPT what it thinks about an AI policy, and if it could start to pull together some examples of good AI policies for you. But in terms of how we have approached it as an organisation, AI is just a technology, the same as many others. We already have policies in place like information privacy, information security, risk management processes, and quite frankly, a lot of the types of things that we will be doing with artificial intelligence already fall under the umbrella of those existing policies that we have in place, also around things like data retention, etc. So I would take a closer look at what are the existing sort of frameworks of policies that you already have in place within your organisation, and consider does the use of AI already fall within some of those other policies? In this space, it's definitely, there's no need to make things more complicated for the sake of it. So if you feel like your organisation is strongly covered by those existing policies that you have in place, maybe it's just extending them to the use of AI. That's the best place to start, and therefore you don't have to make something new.
Thank you. And just got to say, just for our audience, a reminder, if you've got questions for Jessica that come to mind in this AI space, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Thanks, Jessica.
Amazing. Thanks, Shane. Good question. Jumping forward now, starting to think about some of those strategies that you could consider as a leader, and that practical playbook that I shared with you, which I'll get to in just a moment. Here, I think it's really important for us to focus on the leadership actions that you're taking. We need to be setting a clear vision from the top down around the use of AI, and starting, of course, with how AI is supporting that strategy. So a little bit similar to the question that Shane's just asked me, we're not implementing AI for AI's sake. It's not technology just for technology's sake, but really we need to understand what are those problems that we're looking to solve for, and is this the right technology for us to use to solve that problem? So making a business-led AI agenda, it's not about getting more AI, but it's about solving more problems, and it might just be that AI is the technology that you're using to solve those problems. Thinking about as well, how do you actually embrace AI in your daily work? So if you're not already using tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, etc., download them and give them a go. But, if we can focus on as individuals how we're increasing our own proficiency, we're going to start modeling that adoption that we want our teams to have. And as you'll learn in a moment, change management is actually one of the most significant challenges that you will need to overcome as you start to think about embedding AI into your organization. So modeling that adoption and actually helping yourself be more efficient through that use is super important. From a workforce impact perspective as well, it's also time to start thinking about how will some of those roles within your organization shift? Where do you need to upskill your people and your teams to work more effectively with AI? We also want to start to think about what is it that you want to measure. We don't want to boil the ocean straight away and again get AI everywhere. The strategy should not be embed AI everywhere possible, but it should be what are those high value initiatives that we can actually use to start to show that measurable impact and build out that momentum so that you're ready to scale. Thinking about, do you have the funding as well within your strategy today to press forward? So making that space within the budget for some investment in AI so that it's not just something that's added on to the end and you can't do it justice because you don't have enough funding. And then finally, thinking about what are some of the other resources that you can start to think or access to upskill your people within our organization. We have an intranet site. We always refer to it. It's go/GenAI. That's where we start to educate our people about those foundational skills and the tools that they have access to. So there's one central home point that they can go back to access that training. But thinking now about that practical AI playbook for your organizations, and there's 5 different plays here or points that I want to talk you through, starting with exactly that, the starting point. I think a lot of the conversations that I have across industry or at industry events is I just don't know where to start. So hopefully this is something that helps you with that starting point. And the first thing is, what is that problem that you're looking to solve? And then working backwards from there. So from a NAB perspective, that's the way that we think about it. Being a customer-centric organization that is focused on how we build relationships with our colleagues and with our customers. It's not AI for AI's sake. It's what's the problem that we're looking to solve, and then how do we identify the right things that we need to solve it. So identify your pain point, or potentially it's an area where you want to grow. And then from there, particularly if it's the first time that you're dabbling in AI, start to think about a low risk use case that you can jump on board with. Then select a vendor or a partner. And I've got that in there because not all things that are AI related need a team of data scientists. You don't need to build everything yourself in-house. Actually having a couple of different patterns or partners that you might work with is the smartest way to go. And I'm sure being medium-sized businesses, there's plenty of vendors that might already be integrated in your tech stacks that are probably banging down your door, talking to you about AI. So that is the best place to start, is thinking about who you can partner with and where it makes sense if you've already got existing vendors in your business. And then finally, that pilot and measure phase. So it's not worth doing anything if you're not committed to piloting it first and understanding what the impact is, and also measuring that impact so that you know that if you do move it to scale, that it's something that's going to actually be delivering a measurable impact back into your organization. On the cost and return of investment side of things, nothing typically is without an expense. So talk to some of those vendors or partners about what typical pilot might cost you. I think from a medium-sized sort of perspective, your typical entry cost might be in the realms of 50 to 200,000, anywhere in that range. But all relative to the size of your organization and the types of licenses or sort of tech partners that you might work with already. Think about the ongoing costs, as well as from a return on investment perspective, when you need to start seeing some of that return. Just as a general rule of thumb, if you have chosen your pilot well, you should definitely start to see some returns in that sort of near term, so 12 to 24 months, if not in an even tighter time frame. From a risk perspective, and this is super important, particularly if you're in an industry that is heavily regulated like financial services, really thinking about that data privacy, data security, what are those other regulations that you might need to consider so that you remain compliant with your use of AI? And then from a bias and ethics perspective, and happy to chat if people would like about what this might entail, but also ensuring that it's not a set and forget. We do need to test model outputs quite regularly, the same as you would with any other type of machine learning that you might have running within your organization. We need to make sure that it is doing what you intend it to do. From a workforce perspective, I think one of the biggest learnings that I've certainly had as I have worked with embedding AI within organizations is that it's less about the technical transformation and it's more about the business transformation that we need to bring our organization on with us. So change management is everything. You need to communicate early. We need to think about if you're retraining or sort of shifting focus for your employees, what that looks like. But remembering that first and foremost, it's a cultural shift for people. Not everyone is using these tools yet in their daily lives. And so we need to make sure that we're creating space for them to come up that learning curve, thinking about how they can be curious with the tools that they have at their disposal and start to experiment with how they could be augmenting their workflows as well through the use of AI. I can't underline number 4 in the playbook enough. Change management is a significant consideration that you really do need to think about because without adoption, the success of the initiative essentially fails. And then finally, thinking about future readiness and how do we plan for what might be around the corner? I'm sure some of you might have heard about terms like agentic AI. The future is definitely coming. But for now, the biggest gains or benefits that we're seeing go back to what I was sharing with you around the economy and where we need to get to from a productivity perspective. So the biggest gains at the moment through the use of these tools are efficiency. How do we improve our customer service? How do we ensure that we remain compliant in a number of spaces? What we're starting to see moving forward, and you might have already experienced again with some of the vendors and suppliers that you might partner with in your existing sort of technology spaces, is that everyone is going to have an AI co-pilot embedded in some form. And so it's just about being really targeted and meaningful in how you start to roll that out to your organization. Just because it can be switched on doesn't always mean that you need to switch it on either. So really just start to think about that return on investment and are you seeing those benefits coming through to warrant having capability enabled. And then finally, in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe that's a little ambitious, maybe it's more like 5 to 10, really starting to see a much stronger emergence of business models that are AI driven and thinking about how do we fully reshape, redesign some of the products and services that we're offering to our customers around an AI-driven approach. Again, remembering though that it's what's the problem that we're looking to solve. It's not just about getting more AI. So finally, in terms of those key takeaways, really just encouraging you to start with a clear vision. It's how AI supports the strategy. It's not just technology for technology's sake. The most practical starting point is to just start with one use case, one pilot, and then choosing that trusted partner to work with. Not everything has to be built in-house. Thinking about your quick wins. So how do you spend wisely? How do you ensure that the pilot is small scale enough that it's manageable for you, but you can still measure fast and start to think about that return on investment and demonstrating return on investment so that you can move into a more scaled approach. Measuring those outcomes, but also then building that confidence in your workforce. So retraining, reskilling staff, most importantly, bringing them on that journey with you. And of course, remaining compliant. So always giving consideration to privacy, security, regulation, data ethics, transparency. All of that is non-negotiable as you start to move into the world of artificial intelligence. Back to you, Shane.
Jessica, thank you. It's a great topic and covering the way that you have what is AI, how businesses are applying and using AI now, and then sharing a framework. I hope it's valuable to all of our audience. Getting a couple of questions through. So, Jessica, and you did touch on the obligations, regulatory, privacy. But there is a question here, maybe go a little bit deeper. How are legal privacy obligations protected when using AI with specific private information? I think that's a good question.
It is a very good question. I think it also depends on the type of AI that we're referring to. But as with most things, I think referring back to your privacy policy, making sure that you're informing customers of the reasons why you're collecting their information and what it is that you plan on doing with that information, including the use of AI. It's standard privacy regulation, just ensuring that we have transparency in the mix, and particularly if it's going to be used with AI, calling that out to your customers.
That's right. So there really is privacy obligations in the market right now. This becomes part of that. It's not different. You mentioned agentic AI, and there is a question. What is agentic AI? And do I need to worry about it?
It's a very good question. So agentic AI is, another layer that I need to add into my little AI square that I was sharing with you. And that's where we start to think about how do we use AI to really drive autonomy and create a system that is fully capable of executing a task end to end. It's not as simple as things that we might have seen before, like RPA or robotics and automation. These types of tools have the ability to use reasoning, they have memory, they can pull through context of things that have happened elsewhere, provided that you give them that access. So it goes one step further in being able to, create efficiency within an organization, completing a task end to end. Yes, everyone should be thinking about, once I start to jump on this AI bandwagon, how do I really drive the right efficiency with the right mix of products? But everything shouldn't be agentic for the sake of being agentic, the same as everything shouldn't be AI for the sake of being AI. Really think about the problem that you need to solve, because some of these solutions can be quite costly and timely to integrate and embed into your organization. So if there's a simpler, more cost-effective way to solve your problem that is just standard RPA or robotics, for example, then do that. But well worth listening to a few presentations from vendors if you haven't already on that front.
Okay. This is maybe another one. We do have some time. I like this one. You've come with your background, and you've come across to NAB in the role that you're in around Gen AI. What is the biggest learning you've had embedding Gen AI initiatives into NAB? We may read that as, what's your biggest challenge, do you think? Sharing that with some of our business customers.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. And thank you for the question. I think I covered it partially in my presentation. This is not a technical transformation as much as it is a business transformation for us all to think about. So the technology is there, it can be leveraged, it's delivering proven benefits across a number of organisations, both in Australia and globally. The biggest challenge is adoption and that change management. So it's a business transformation issue that you need to solve for. So again, comes back to how are we engaging the workforce? Are we using the right technology to solve the problem? And what are the tools and mechanisms that we have in place for us to really support our colleagues in that uptake of this new technology?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we're at the questions there. And I'll just add as we get around, Jessica, I think on behalf of NAB colleagues, to talk to our audience here, as we get around talking to business customers we do every day, it's very topical, no doubt about that. And the thinking that even I'm experiencing, particularly I think you touched on it, using AI to use the data so you can become more efficient, but at the same time deliver a better customer experience, a better distribution network, so you can save money as well. So there's that two sides of it. It's efficiency, but at the same time improving your business outcome. and using AI, which would it be fair to say, Jessica, AI is really taking data that's already there, but giving it back to business in a way that you can actually make some decisions about what's right for your business.
Yep, absolutely. And particularly with the introduction of generative AI tools, it's not just about structured data anymore. So it's not just about things that fit very nicely and neatly into columns and rows in a spreadsheet that's organized logically. It's also about unstructured data. How do we use our unstructured data better? So that could be, a wealth of information that you have in your systems about the way that a particular plant operates. Actually starting to ingest that and finding meaning in information that previously would have taken a significant amount of time and manual effort for you to unpack. We're definitely seeing, that even opens up different questions that you might not have thought about previously. For example, thinking about a better knowledge management tool for our frontline teams and thinking about all the knowledge bases and data that they have access to. Through generative AI, not only are we able to solve that problem for them and give them answers to their questions more quickly. But it also helped us to surface there might be areas in our knowledge sources that have conflicting information. And how do we go about actually resolving that and fixing it so that our people, again, have clearer guidance on what it is that they need to do? So you're totally right, Shane. It's not only just about using the data that we have better, but how do we actually start to solve problems we don't even know we had through better access to that.
Just want to say thank you. I think I feel like the way that it's been presented, the conversation and the questions will leave a lot of us with a bit more information, a bit more informed on where we go next, both here at NAB and our business, with our business customers in an informed way. So remind everybody a copy of the recording and probably most importantly, a copy of Jessica's presentation will be provided to everyone. And I do encourage you to have a look at that, read through. And so I'll say thank you, Jessica, for that. A few takeouts from me. Jessica, you said the growth potential, it's like adding another mining industry to our economy. It's mind-boggling. And then, of course, it's not the future. That potential is right now. We saw that in some of the examples that you shared, how businesses are using it right now. So thank you for sharing that framework. And I hope our audience there can use that to get started on how to engage, which is that AI potential. So I want to say thank you for everyone who has joined today. As I said, we'll share the presentation with everybody, but we'd love you to keep the conversation going with your NAB business banker. And any questions that you have, please post this event, send them through. We'd love to get back to you. Our next Insights webinar is in October, and we're on markets and the forecast for interest rates and exchange rates, so please look out for that invitation. You'll receive a survey for some feedback on today's session. I would love to get your feedback because that helps us design the insights that you would like to engage with and that we can bring to you each month. Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And on behalf of Jessica, myself, and all of my NAB colleagues, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.